Thank you, French Shalom. Welcome, one and all, and it is a very special Sabbath because we have a Rosh Hodesh today. And if we lived in the southern United States, we may call it a Rosh Hodown because it is a community party or celebration, and I love putting words together and giving them new and unique meaning. So just what is it? I'm sure you all have heard the term, but did not necessarily know exactly what it was. And I know that sometimes I explain things you already know, but I would rather err on the side of someone not knowing and wondering than use words or terms that you do not know. Well, as we know from our recent holy day, that Rosh means head of or beginning, and Hodesh is the Hebrew word for month. And so it's just a fancy way of saying the new moon. And that, my friends, was one of the first orders we were given by God, for us to observe and celebrate the new moon. Doesn't make us Celtic or Wiccan, just observant and inclusive. So why the moon? Well, you see, the sun marks days, but the moon marks everything else and allows us to see day by day the changes that occur. It marks seasons, which means it marks time. And time is extremely holy to God. We set aside sacred time every week, like the time you spend with me here and now. And so what's more appropriate to observe than the new moon? And it was so big, it would be announced by a shofar blast. Don't forget, most holy days mentioned are counted from the first of a month. So knowing when the month commenced became an extremely important part of ritual. We are so used to clocks and watches and calendars, but time was different then. Speaking of ritual, we're only a week away from that non-Jewish Purim, Halloween. And as those watching the video can see, I have been growing my beard this month. And so I'm getting ready to trick or treat. And I guess if I wear red, I will be Santa. And if not, I will be Moses. I have to say, I don't really understand the fascination with the darkness of it as a celebration. I get Purim. It celebrates a genocide that did not occur. I like light, happy celebrations, although there is nothing wrong with any festival that leaves you with chocolate and candies. I'm sure after last week that you all rushed to read that amazing parsha, filled with creation, deception, expulsion, and murder. Just the usual of life. Believe me, friends, you could spend an incredible amount of time just thinking about, reading about, studying, and learning from that small introduction to the Bible. Also, I'm not sure if you noticed, but eating from the tree of knowledge of good and bad, and never forget, friends, that was its official title, seemed to have only one immediate consequence. Before eating from the tree, the humans are not embarrassed over nudity, and after eating from it, they are. And I'm sure you also noticed in your reading of Bereshit what would become the undercurrent throughout Genesis and would haunt the entire Torah: the displacement of the firstborn by the younger, made so painfully obvious in the Ishmael-Isaac story, the Esau-Jacob story, and even the Leah-Rachel story. But friends, isn't it incredible? The one who perpetrated that pattern here in the beginning with Cain and Abel was not the parents, but God himself, when he chose the sacrifice of the younger over the older. Wow. And so it begins. As I said last week, people often see this book as disjointed stories instead of a continuous narration. And remember, the book of Genesis is probably the only book that is a continuous narration. But people get really bored by all the begats and often skim over it. But these genealogical lists, Toldot in Hebrew, which is actually the name of a parsha we will read later, are carefully placed units marking off one large narrative segment from another. In this case, it's the separation of the story of creation and the antediluvian founding figures from the deluge story. Friends, we're about to read Noah, a story that marks a shift in the book. Once again, friends, this week we have two seemingly completely unrelated stories, both of epic proportion, but both with a common theme in which tie the world of creation to our world. The theme is the evil in men's hearts. We see it in the Noah story, and we will see it with the Tower of Babel story, which was the beginning of the world we know. We remember strange things for strange reason, and one of the things I'll never forget is the child's Bible song, Who Built the Ark? Who built the ark? Noah, Noah. Who built the ark? Brother Noah built the ark. And it seems we all have Noahs in our lives. And this week I send this out to the two 49er Noahs, Bobs and Bruces. And friends, perhaps it is the most famous story of all in the Bible. Now, when I think of Noah, I don't think of the Irish Rovers unicorn song or animals marching into a boat 2 by 2. No, a different picture comes to mind. Oh, a storm is threatening my very life today. If I don't get some shelter, oh yeah, I'm going to fade away. Thank you, Mick and Keith, for an amazing song and for introducing the world to Mary Clayton. I don't know how many of you saw the latest version of Noah. Last year, I think it was. I didn't think the gladiator guy was a great Noah, and I did not know what some of the animals were, but all I really wanted to see was how they were going to depict the tabah, the box that carried them. What we call an ark and incorrectly think of as a boat. But an ark, a tabah, was a box, rudderless, sailless, keelless, at the complete mercy of the waves, and the first biblical demonstration of blind faith. And friends, unlike the song, there was no fading away here. It wasn't just the mother of all thunderstorms. Did you notice it actually depicted the reversal of day 2 of creation? Here there is a surge of waters from the great deep below and from the heavens above. While during the creation story, a vault was erected to divide the waters above from the waters below. So now it's almost like running it in reverse. You would have to have a real understanding of the structure of creation to understand the destruction that's taking place. And very few in our day and age pay enough attention to the unfolding of creation to have that. But biblical man understood it perfectly. It wasn't a rainstorm. Now, I love the description of Noah in Genesis 6:9. He was unblemished in his generations. Friends, our sages have debated that sentence in trying to decide if it meant he was extremely righteous or just righteous compared to the people around him. And seeing they were all sentenced to die, you wouldn't necessarily have to be so good to have that description. And here is where the words tell us so much. You see, there really are no degrees of being unblemished. It's the same word and the same term used for sacrifices, and we see how important that is as the Torah develops. And so it is stringent. And through the use of the word, we actually have his virtue being established for us. But you might ask, how virtuous would we view him knowing what was coming after they leave the ark? And again, we do know. We've read it before. Friends, God had always decided he'd made a mistake. Genesis 6:12 tells us all the flesh had corrupted its way, not just man, all animals too. The most amazing biblical demarcation was taking place, one that has become a part of almost every culture in the world. The great Donovan Leitch, a.k.a. Donovan, the fellow who taught the Beatles finger picking while in India, wrote about antediluvian times. That is before the flood in his classic Atlantis, way down below the ocean, where I want to be, she may be. And you know, friends, I thought about that song and I realized it's a very meditative song with an inviting image and that refrain that just keeps repeating. And when we do our 2-part Sabbath service video, you will see that I've broken down some of the songs and prayers between those that are meditative and those that are specific and serve a different purpose. Noah is a fascinating story and the second great blending of 2 different stories into one. We had it with creation, now we have it with the flood. But most people, even though they've heard it time and again or read it time and again, think of it as one. And we are presented with the picture of a helpless box of life, tossed about in a violent universe that is breaking apart at its seams. What an incredible image. What an amazing testament to faith. And friends, even in this tale of terror, there are demonstrations of love. The animals come to Noah as God commanded, and Yahweh closed it for him. God sewed clothes for Adam and Eve, and now shuts the door for Noah. And this pretty well marks the end of his closeness to man. God's relationship is about to change. And then we are told in Genesis 8, God remembered Noah and all the wild and domestic animals with him in the ark and passed the wind over the earth and the water decreased. What a choice of words. God remembered Noah? It makes it sound like God forgot for a while and this box was floating while God was off doing something else. And then said, oh wow, I forgot Noah. You know, friends, there's an old tradition that Elohim was the just God and Yahweh was the merciful God. And again, you lose that in translation and in pronunciation. Don't forget, biblical man read the name of God as written. We do not. Now, it is actually not the case, but we try so hard to find things and often miss the things that are there. One of them being a huge shift that takes place after the flood. You see, vegetarian man in the garden is now allowed a carnivore's diet. Possibly, as some suggested, intended as an outlet for man's violent impulses. And in harmony with that change, man does not merely rule over the animal kingdom, but now he inspires it with fear. The human is bad. What if we only eat meat because we have these bad hearts and aren't going to change? God makes two promises, the first to himself in his heart, and the second to Noah. The Lord said in his heart, I will not again damn the soil on humankind's score. For the devisings of the human heart are evil from youth, and I will not again strike down all living things as I did. This is not the covenant not to destroy. That comes later. This is God pledging to himself, talking to himself, basically saying, they're evil, I'll live with it. Watch out now, take care, beware of darkness. Believe it or not, this has been a big conundrum. Our sages have suggested that humans saved animal species by taking them in the ark, and so animals now owe their lives to humankind, and so we can eat them. I kind of miss the logic in that one. We didn't eat them before, and we saved them, so now we can eat them. I don't get it. And even though we can eat them, you shall not eat flesh in its life, its blood. We cannot eat meat if there is blood in it. So maybe God just figured we'd see how lousy and dry it could be and choose not to do it anymore. I don't know. I do know that we have lost our understanding of life. When there were sacrifices, we understood the sacredness of life, of all life. I'm not so sure that we still do. The Torah is full of so many rules, regulations, rituals about taking life, about its sacredness. Look around. You might not think so today. We all know that after doing this great job of ark building and saving all the species of earth, Noah becomes a winemaker. We are told he plants vines, drank the wine, was drunk, and exposed inside his tent. And we have this really strange episode with his sons where he is seen naked. And friends, there was actually rabbinic discussions as to whether this meant that he was sexually attacked by one of his sons. Noah dies and another huge genealogy is given, a very famous one, known as the Table of Nations. And like the previous Toldot, which divided creation from the deluge, this one serves as a divider in the Torah between the antediluvian age and the post. Life will never be the same again. Sorry if I hurt you, baby. Sorry if I did. Sorry if I touched the place where your secrets are hid. But you meant more than everything, and I could not pretend. I ain't ever going to be the same again. You're at chapter 10 of Genesis, my friends, which we said had 50 chapters. And you have now completed the entire cosmic story. And as much as I love the cosmic aspect of the Torah, one of my favorite stories is the one this parsha ends with. Genesis 11:1 says, and it was all the earth was one language and the same words. We are at the Tower of Babel episode, Migdal Babel. And friends, that is a term never used in the Torah. It says the city, or the city and its tower. But our psychology of illusion tells us otherwise. What this episode so strongly points to is that man is always at odds with the good state of creation. God said it when he said earlier, the human heart is evil from youth. The Torah does not tell us what man hopes to accomplish with this construction. And again, controversy arises when it says, let us go down and confound their speech in Genesis 11:7. But this episode did two things. It shifted the narrative away from humanity as a group to individuals and served as an etiology, an origin explanation, providing the reason for languages and explaining the name of Babylon, even though the Babylonians thought it meant gate of God. You see, its name came from the Akkadian Bab Ilu, gate of God, not from the Hebrew Balel, which means jumble. But in English we like to say Babel. so it sounds good. Historically, the tower was probably the ziggurat at Babylon. Those that known, in historical times as the Edamen Anki, the temple of the foundation of heaven and earth, dedicated to the supreme god of Babylon, Marduk. And we know that it had been destroyed and rebuilt by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of the first exile. We also know the tower was never destroyed by God. And the Torah is painfully weak on details. So if you want to know more about it, friends, read the book of Jubilees, which I would encourage you all to read anyhow, because it tells the incredible story of the fallen ones, the Nephilim, the giants and angels only hinted at last week in Genesis 6, and what many believed were the cause of the flood because of their intermarriage with humans. And the book of Jubilees gives the most detailed account of the tower's building found anywhere. And friends, there is a midrash, which are the early rabbinic interpretations of the Torah, which says that it was built because the builders felt God has no right to choose the upper world for himself and leave the lower world for us. Therefore, we will build us a tower with an idol on the top holding a sword, so that it may appear as if we intended to war with God. Wow! Boy, these have an evil heart. And this suggestion about the people wanting to war with God can actually be found in the Talmud, in Sanhedrin 109a. And that says that Rabbi Sheila taught, they said, let us build a tower, ascend to heaven, and cleave it with axes, that its waters might gush forth. And Rabbi Jeremiah ben Eliezer said, they split up into three parties. One said, let us ascend and dwell there. The second, let us ascend and serve idols. And the third said, let us ascend and wage war with God. So what happens? The Torah tells us man dispersed and spoke different languages. The Talmud tells us the party which proposed, let us ascend and dwell there, the Lord scattered them. The group that said, let us ascend and wage war, were turned to apes, spirits, devils, and night demons, while the party which said, let us ascend and serve idols, were the ones that the Lord did confound the language of all the earth. Now, I wonder when I read that if some of that second group ended up as the flying monkeys in The Wizard of Oz, perhaps. It sure looks like we've been fighting an uphill battle for a long, long time. God may have said we have evil in our hearts from youth, but we also have love and desire and good and decency, and it can overcome the other. And I think I'll hold on to George Harrison's words. It's so true it can happen to you. Knock and it will open wide. And it only takes time till love comes to everyone. Thanks for joining me, my friends. We will see you again soon. Be well, be happy, be blessed, and share your blessings with others. Have an awesome week, my friends. Shabbat Shalom.